Hey guys, welcome to the May wrap up. I know it's mid June, but I couldn't find my camera, I couldn't find my hard drive, couldn't do anything. Um, I read a total of 13 books in May. In April, I had previously read 12, but I'm always not going to do an April wrap up. I read a bunch of good books, I'd say. Overall, I had a lot of 5 stars and 4.5s. And if I get a lot of fours and fives, I'm generally really happy. I had a few books that I didn't really enjoy that I'm going to go through. And it was a mixture of a lot of fantasy, some contemporary, and then two middle grade books. So I'm going to be talking about those. So let's get started. The first book we have is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I initially picked this up because it's a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but also because the synopsis was intriguing. So the story behind this is not a dragon, but there's a wizard called Dragon that protects a village, and every 10 years he comes down to the village and he takes a tribute in the form of a girl, and she spends 10 years with him in the tower, and after those 10 years are up, the women come back, they are more financially independent, they have luxurious clothing, and they're able to move into the city and live on their own. I picked it up because I was curious as to what exactly is going on in this tower during those 10 years, since nobody knows what is going on. And then who is this wizard called Dragon? So I went into this expecting to like it. Unfortunately, I didn't. And I know I'm in the minority. I didn't watch any reviews when I picked this up. I solely just went off of what was in the synopsis, and that's why I picked it up. But the majority of the people that I have watched videos for that have reviewed this book liked it. And I just don't know why I didn't connect to any of the characters. I didn't feel for the female protagonist. I wasn't rooting for her. I wasn't rooting for their relationship. There was something missing, and I'm gonna read this down the line a bit, just to see if I feel the same way. Maybe I was rushing through it. I have no idea. The magical system wasn't interesting as well. It wasn't really clear. It was I didn't feel like I got what was going on. I understand the nuance that was trying to be that Rosamund was trying to introduce into the magic system, and showing that this female protagonist has her own technique and her own way, and that's why her magic is successful. But and I felt like the book was trying to be grand at times because there was a war and going to court and things like that. I hate that I didn't like this because I had my eye on the Rumpelstiltskin retelling that she has. I don't remember what it's called. I think it has something to do with silver something. But I really wanted to get that one. And I hate that I didn't like this one. And this is something that I find with some authors where I'll enjoy their series, but I won't enjoy their standalones. So what I've done is I've actually ordered a series that she has, something with His Majesty's Dragon. I forgot what the series is actually called, but maybe I'll like the series more than I like her standalones. So that's something that I'm going to try and figure out and see if that is the reason. The next book is Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge. Now, this is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast that I actually did like, and I read this before I read Uprooted. The story behind this is there is a girl whose father is part of a society that is working against somebody called the Demon King. And when she is, I think at birth, I think I don't I forgot if it's at birth or when she goes up a bit. Her father promises her as a bride to the Demon King, but secretly that engagement is for the purpose and the sole purpose of her marrying him and then killing him, and subsequently she might lose her life in the process as well. I loved seeing like the genuine resentment that she had against her twin sister who didn't have to go through this, and then her father who was distancing himself from her, probably because this is a mission that she has, and maybe he can't form a connection or he doesn't want to form a connection with her. And he dotes on her sister, and it was so real. She wasn't a morally perfect character that thought, you know what, I'm going to do this for my people, and she was a happy martyr. No, she hated that she had to do this. So she let you know, I'm going to do this, but I just hate it. I wish it was somebody else. And I hate that it's not anybody else. And I hate that everybody else doesn't have to deal with this, but I have to deal with this. So that was just, I liked that about her. She wasn't morally perfect. I liked her. I liked the Demon King. I liked the other characters that are involved as well. The people that she meets at the castle after she marries him. It wasn't as dark as I thought it would be, which is fine. I wouldn't have minded if it was a bit darker, but that was perfectly okay with me. The reason that I gave this, I think either 4 or 4.5, so I docked down a bit, was because of the ending. There were bits and pieces of the ending that were a bit confusing for me. I don't know if I rushed or if I just didn't understand, but that was why I didn't give it a complete 5 stars. But I actually liked it. I liked the uniqueness of where she was living. I don't want to go into too many details, but she she moves into this castle or this palace or whatever it is, and she's going like on a self tour looking through the rooms and whatnot. And I liked her describing what she saw and the unique things that she saw. So I actually really liked this book. So that was thankfully a good read for me. Next, we have The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. I've read 2 of her books so far, and I think I'm a Trisha fan. I've ordered Daughter of the Siren Queen and Daughter of the Pirate King. I've read this one and I've read Warrior in the Wild or Of the Wild. She is one of those writers that has the ability to do a fantasy standalone well, in my opinion. I don't think it's too rushed. I don't think it's too long. Nothing about it is confusing. I've loved both of the books that I've read so far. They've been 5 star reads for me. So the story behind The Shadows Between Us is we have another homicidal bride who decides, who she sets her eye on the Shadow King, and she wants to marry him and then kill him because she wants his power. She wants the power that comes with being a queen. She wants to make changes. She wants to be acknowledged. And this stems from it's, I mean, it's a nice, like, psychological study of this character to see why she is the way that she is. And when you look at her life at home and the way that her father treats her and treats her sister, the way her sister treats her, a lot of her issues come from that, and you get to see that a bit. I mentioned this in my haul when I hauled this book, that on the first page, so I don't consider this a spoiler, but on the first page she tells you that she killed her ex-boyfriend because he didn't love her back and that he wanted to go and be with somebody else. So it was, I mean, when I read that first page, I was like, okay, where is this gonna go? But I ended up actually liking this. I liked the characters. I liked all of the characters involved. I don't think I hated anybody. All of the characters were done well. I liked the bit of magic that was in this book. It's not heavily magical, but the bit that is there is the main focus, and it's interesting, or at least I thought it was interesting. I enjoyed the plot. Any comments that I may have had were minor or inconsequential. They didn't affect whether or not I enjoyed this book, but I actually genuinely really liked this. I would highly recommend for you guys to read Shadows Between Us. It was a good book. Next, we have a book by Laura Thalassa called Rhapsodic. This is part of the Bargainer series. The series has a total of 3 books, but then there's a novella, so it's 4 in total. The story, very loosely behind this, is there's a girl called Calypso or Callie. She is a siren and she lives in the mortal realm. And when she is 15, going on 16, she starts to ask for favors from somebody called the Bargainer. And the Bargainer is somebody that is of the Fae realm. So the implication is that he is a trickster. So when you ask for a favor, you have to be very careful what you're asking for. And on top of that, he can come at any moment and ask you to repay that favor, and whatever it is, you are you're compulsed to pay it back. And if you don't, then you die. There's a sort of like magic that kind of takes hold of you up until you repay the favor. So that's very loosely what the story's about. I can't go into too much. I don't want to ruin the plot, because it doesn't just revolve around that. It's not just a romance about, this guy asking for favors from a girl. There is something else that happens in the Fae realm that they get roped into. I think that's what I can say safely without ruining anything for anybody. But generally, I like this. I've read the first and the second book. I'm looking forward to reading the third. There was one part of the first book, which is this one, Rhapsodic, that I thought could have been done a bit well. It was something that could have ended a lot sooner than it did, but it didn't. And I don't understand why it didn't end sooner. But when you read it, hopefully you guys can see what I'm talking about. But it wasn't that bad. That mishandling of it. It was generally okay, and I like the book, and I'm going to continue reading the series. Next, we have Sarah J. Moss. I don't know. Next, we have A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury. So, book one and book two. Loved them both. I think both of them were 5-star reads for me. I hate rating things according to the star system, but I acknowledge that I have to. I think I enjoyed the second one. I enjoyed the world building in the second one, but I think that's unfair to say because in the second one you got to see more of the world. In the first one, you were forced to stay in a specific part of the world, and therefore it doesn't make sense for you to see more of it. So I can't really dock her for that. But I loved the way that the story went. I appreciated being able to look at events that happened in the first book from a different perspective. Now, generally, I hate when authors will write a story, it's super successful, and then the second book is the same story but from a different perspective. I don't think you should dedicate an entire book to that, but partially, yes, I'm fine with that. So Reese did that with some of the events that happened in the first book. And I really liked it. I liked seeing how he saw things from his own point of view and how he felt about what he was seeing. And then the interactions that he had with her in the first book and him explaining how it was from his point of view. I appreciated that. I liked it. I liked seeing that added layer to what was happening because we didn't get any insight into him or into his mind during that first book or when we were first introduced to him, and purposefully so. But I loved the direction of the story. I loved the new characters that we saw, the people that were in the Court of Night. I liked his friends. I really loved the storyline. I loved everything about it, honestly. This is just a gush about these. And I'm glad that I like these. I knew going into this that there was a lot of hype about these, but I'm glad that it paid off. So next we have Sally Rooney's Normal People. So this revolves around, it's a contemporary story, and it revolves around two teenagers that are just about to graduate. The girl is unpopular, the boy is popular, and they start a secret relationship, namely because they feel comfortable around each other and they feel like they can be themselves around each other. But the boy, since he's popular, doesn't want anybody to know that they're together. And it's important to note that he deals with anxiety, and that's namely the reason why he wants to keep things a secret. He doesn't know how people will take it, and he doesn't want people's image of him or their idea of him to be negatively impacted. You get to see them during their senior year, but then you see when their friendship picks up again when they're in college. They go to the same university. When you see them in high school, you see like the bullying that the girl has to face, and it's uncomfortable and it hurts. And you see that he stays quiet. That's something that would irritate a lot of people, but he just doesn't know how to speak up in a way that doesn't necessarily, he thinks the light's going to shine on him if he says anything to protect her. And so he, more often than not, I'm not saying he doesn't step in, but more often than not, he doesn't do anything. He doesn't condone it, and you can see in the descriptions of him during the instances of bullying, he's not taking part in it. He's not doing any of that. He's not, if I were to compare him to anybody, he's not like Carden from The Cruel Prince, where he's taking part and he's like, he's a person who's coming up with these plans to be the bully to the girl. But he just doesn't know how to do it well, to how to protect her. And he deals with anxiety. It just makes it difficult. And I liked seeing that aspect, seeing what a person with anxiety goes through. And I think everybody has anxiety to a certain extent. And so it's interesting to see how he deals with it and how crippling it can be, and how somebody can deal with anxiety that is super popular, but you would never know. And so you see them during that senior year, and you see them when they're at university, and the script is sort of flipped, and she's popular and he's, I wouldn't say unpopular, but he's quiet, he's low key, doesn't have, a big group of friends around him. So it's interesting to see the dynamic change and to see how they act differently in that situation as well. This is an adult read. It has adult content. You know, there are obviously some triggers when it has to do with, or when it deals with anxiety, and there are some like sexual situations that might be a trigger for people. So I would go into that with that in mind. But generally, I did like reading this book. After reading it, I think it was like a week after, I found out that there was an adaptation. There was a show, probably like 10 or 11 episodes, something along those lines. And I liked it. The common thing when people look at adaptations of books is you compare whether or not, or you like criticize whether or not the adaptation covered, the important scenes and whatnot. And for the adaptation, I would say that wasn't my concern. I didn't want to end up just watching something that was just about their sexual relationship, because for me that wasn't the focus. It was about them coming into their own, and knowing who you are, and identity issues and things like that, things that you grow up with, and problems related to identity that you grow up with. So I think the show did a good job. I would really recommend that you watch that as well. The way that the actor portrayed or like dealt with the anxiety, I think that was done really well as well. But overall, I would recommend this. I did enjoy it, and I would highly recommend that you watch the show too. I just realized I didn't acknowledge my cat meowing in the background. But yes, that was my cat in the background. I no longer hear it when he meows. It's become white noise to me. Anyways, so the next book is Alexandra Christo's To Kill a Kingdom. This is a story about a siren princess who does something wrong, and her mother, the Sea Queen, tells her she's gonna give her legs, that she needs to go out on land and bring back the heart of the siren killer. And of course, you guessed it, the siren killer is a handsome young man who happens to be a prince, and so she has to figure out a way to complete her mission. That's all I'm going to say about that. You can kind of guess where the story is going, but it's not about, as cliche as it is, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So seeing how she comes to the decision that she comes to, and what she decides to do in the end, is what keeps you reading. I I would say I overall liked the book, but I didn't connect to any of the characters. I think that would be my only comment. I read this in early May, so I hate that I don't remember why, but I just wasn't invested in them. Like, I wasn't invested as emotionally in the book as I thought I possibly could be. But I mean, for a quick like afternoon read, I would say yeah, you can go ahead and pick up this book, but it wasn't like a wow for me. You're about to hear a shush in the background music. I have no idea what animal makes that sound, but I'm using like a rainforest background sound track. Next, we have Heartless by Marissa Meyer. Now, overall, I would recommend this. I love it. It's the backstory of the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland. When I first started reading this, I remember I didn't read it all in one go, although it's relatively short. But I just kept putting it down because I didn't want to skip. And that's something that I have a problem with when I watch movies or shows, or when I read books. I tend to forward and skip. So I didn't want to do that. And it's a bit of a slower pace. There's a lot of world building. You get to see a lot of like the side characters. But after I think I reached the halfway point, or I think even after I read the entire book, I realized that possibly could have been like intentional, slowing the pace, because I mean, for me, it helped me look at the development of the relationship that is in this book a bit more, and see how it could be meaningful, and for the events not to seem like they were carried out within like a day, for it to seem longer, so that it wasn't just like an insta love kind of story. So I appreciated that after the fact. But initially, when I was reading this, I felt like it was a bit slow. But I ended up actually liking this book. It was heartbreaking. And that was something that I anticipated going into the book. And I didn't want to know if it was like a retelling or if it was just a new addition to like the canon of Alice in Wonderland. Because I didn't know, I didn't want to know which one it was because I was afraid that, yes, it was going to be sad. It ended up being sad, but I didn't want confirmation of that. If that makes any sense, I don't know. I hope that makes sense, but I ended up liking it, and I would recommend it. It was a nice story. So next we have a middle grade book. This is Wish Tree by Catherine Applegate. This story is actually narrated by the tree itself, and there are talking animals involved. It's a super adorable story. It's feel good. It's a super quick read as well. It's like 100 and something pages. I loved it. There's not much to say about this. It's basically just the tree telling you how it came to be what it is, and then it's telling you about some of the current inhabitants of the neighborhood. I think that's all I can say. Like I said, there's not much to say. I just loved it. It was super cute. It was a quick read. I needed like a palate cleanser after reading a series. I forgot what it was, but it's a nice palate cleanser for anybody that's looking for one. And then I read Pirates by Celia Reese. This is one of those stories that I don't know how I feel about. I just don't know. I skipped some of the parts. It's about a girl whose father dies and she sails to, I think it's like the Bahamas or somewhere in the Caribbean. And something happens. She has to run away and she finds herself in league with pirates and she has to learn how to be a pirate. I don't know how I feel about this. I don't think it wasn't exciting for me. Like I said, I skipped a lot of the parts, like if it involved fighting or characters that I wasn't interested in. I liked the lead, the female protagonist, but I don't think any of the other characters meant anything to me. I felt like they were distant. I tried to like them, and I don't know. I felt like I was distant. So I generally didn't enjoy this too much. It was a good way to pass the time at the time that I was reading, but I didn't enjoy it, I think, is the bottom line. The last two books that I read, I don't have copies of. They're books that I borrowed from my sister. The first one is the third book in the Hush Hush series. Don't even know what it's called. I think it's Crescendo or Silence. I didn't like it. I hate that series so much. I went into it with so many expectations only because people kept telling me, oh my god, you have to read it, namely my sister. And she kept saying, you know what, you've owned this book for so many years, you need to read it, you have to read it, go through it. And the impression that I got was that I was going to read it and love it. Why else would you tell me every time you saw the book on my table to read it? I read it. I didn't like it. I mean, every book that I've read in that series loses a star with each book that I read. I liked the first one. Wasn't bad, but the ending was absolutely horrible. And spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't read Hush Hush yet, but the ending, like the resolution is, the conflict is resolved in one night. How does that make sense? I mean, they live in a small town, and in one night they go to another town, something happens, they come back to their town, and they go out of nowhere and they figure out who did this and that. And it was just too much. It was going good. I liked the beginning. It had promise, and I liked the twist that came with the story of these specific fallen angels. Like, I liked that. That was interesting. But the way that the resolution was handled, I think was just handled poorly. I hate when just solutions come from the sky and things are resolved that quickly. It's not believable. There needs to be a longer struggle, and if you knew that you were going to be writing a series about this, why would it end that quickly? And then the second book, I think it was the second book, is where the main character gets amnesia. And so you spend a good chunk of the book watching her learn about things that you already know about. And then the thing that was supposed to be mysterious, one tidbit that she didn't know because she had amnesia, that we were supposed to discover with her, was something that was fairly obvious. It was who did something to somebody else, and it's clear to everybody who that person is. So that wasn't even a mystery. I hated it. I hated it so much. I think I gave the first book 4 stars. So I took off a star just for that horrible ending. And then I gave the second book 3 stars. And then the third book 2 stars. And I haven't read the fourth book yet. And I honestly, I don't think I'm going to. I don't want to waste my time. I usually will go through a series just so that I can know what happened and to be fair to it. Because sometimes, I mean, especially if you guys check Goodreads and you look at the ratings of a specific series, sometimes you'll see, the ratings get better and sometimes the ratings get worse. So I was thinking, you know what? The book, this might go better. The next one might be a little bit better, but it ended up not being the fact, and I hated it. I hated it so much. So that was one of the books that I read. And then the last book is a book by, I think, Tara Albatron. I think that's her name. It's a book called The Possible. And it's an interesting premise. It's a girl whose mother was convicted of killing her little brother. And when they arrested her, she claimed to have telekinetic powers. God, that was hard to say. And she claimed to have these powers, and so she was trying to claim innocence through that. So things that were happening, or the crime that happened, wasn't intentional from her, she didn't mean it. And so this daughter that survives this catastrophe or this tragedy is contacted by somebody who has a podcast, and she tells her, you know what, I want to look into the story of your mom, and of her so-called powers, and I want to do a show revolving around it. And this is a person who generally does podcasts about these things. And so that's the premise, very loosely. It was an interesting read. I enjoyed it. My sister, she told me to read this and then something else by the same author called The Leaving. She actually told me to start The Leaving first, but I started with The Possible because it was shorter. And I enjoyed it. I liked the way that things were looked at from a different perspective. The way that the chapters are written is like sprinkled in with the events are flashbacks of the daughter, remembering things that happened in the past and thinking, well, it could be possible that, that her mom is telekinetic, that she could possibly be telekinetic as well. So she analyzes instances from her life under the lens of telekinesis is possible, and I might have it as well. So she'll look at a situation where, for example, as a child, somebody wanted, or somebody had ice cream and she wanted ice cream, but she wasn't allowed to have any. And the ice cream with the other kid, fell on the pavement. And she starts to wonder, well, did somebody actually push that kid, or was it because I wanted that ice cream that it fell? So that was interesting, having her go through different instances in her life and try to explain that away, looking at it logically, and then looking at it with the mindset that telekinesis is possible. So I overall enjoyed the book. I'm open to reading another book by the same author. So like I said, I have The Leaving. The Leaving has an interesting concept, so I'm hoping I can get to that soon. But generally, I had a good reading month in the month of May. June is a bit slower, but I'm hoping that it picks up soon, and hopefully I'm going to be able to publish the June wrap-up on time and not in mid-July, but at the start of July. Fingers crossed. And I'm still figuring out how I want to do these wrap-ups, if I'm going to go the spoiler route or the spoiler-free route. I kind of want to go for the former because it's easier to talk about the books and not worry about spoiling anything, because you don't know what will spoil something for somebody. So I think it would just be easier just to definitely have spoilers, and then discuss the books that way. And the discussion will also be easier for me to tell you why I felt a certain way and highlight a specific situation in the book or instance in the book that made me feel that way. So I'm still thinking about it. I'm still figuring out what style I want. I'm watching a lot of videos to try to get some ideas and see what I'm drawn to. But please leave me your comments. I would love to go through them. If there's a preference, if you guys have a suggestion as to how these wrap ups might be a little bit better, I'm open to that as well. So, like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm hoping I get to see you guys relatively soon. June is almost done. So, I'll be able to do my June wrap up and hopefully be able to discuss things a bit better in that video. Thanks, guys.